What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Old Eyes, New Glasses podcast. We are so excited to continue our series today on fatherhood, the podcast series on fatherhood. We are thrilled to have this brother join us today, Chris Orr, a longtime friend of ours, principal, educator, father, husband, community activist. Everything that you look for in a strong brother, man. What's up, Chris? Good morning, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me. Excited to be a part of this.
Man, we are excited for you to be part of this. Hey, what's going on with you, man? How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's good to be on this podcast with a couple more fathers, and I'm very interested to learn. This series has been really good for me, just getting some insight. So I'm looking forward to hearing more of what you got to say.
Well, as your father, man, I want to say, let's just make sure that you're not a father for some time yet, brother. Just keep
That's
learning.
also been.
Take your time, brother. Take your time.
That's one of the things I've gathered from these episodes so far. Is what, I can take my time, and there's no rush to get into it.
Absolutely not. well, real quick, Chris, we just kind of want to get started. As I tell everybody, we just gonna chop it up and have a bit of a conversation here. I know you are the father of two sons, and I'm gonna just turn it over to you for a minute to just talk a little bit about yourself, your professional experiences and your attributes, and then your sons. Tell us a little bit about them, and then I'll turn it over to Avery, and we'll pop this thing off.
All right. So as you mentioned, I'm an educator. I've been in education for close to 20 years now, and it is a unique experience. You find, I've always told young people, and I try to tell this to my sons, that as you're moving into the second part of your life, after you graduate high school and you're moving into college and you're studying, ultimately, what do you want in life? Because the thought process for me, when you're young, you say, I want to make a lot of money and I want to do this and I want to do that. In reality, all of us are going to work for a living, right? So you want to be able to have a job that you would do for free. You want to do something that you love. How great is it to make a living doing something that you love? So ultimately, that's what you want to find. That's the college experience that I always try to tell young people, and I tell my sons, because right after college, I didn't have that. I was just filling my way around. But once I realized that serving young people was a passion of mine, it was the greatest decision. And I resigned from a position I was at. I moved into education. It was the best decision I ever made, because what it allowed me to do is love what I do for a living. I get paid to support kids, and I would do that for free. So putting that into the father context, man, you work with young people all day and you see experiences and you get feedback from hundreds of kids. And then you go home and you hear the same things from your sons, sometimes a little bit different, sometimes the same, but you're putting all these experiences together. And it's a unique experience. Man, I feel like I'm doing it all day, whether I'm doing it with somebody else's kid or with my kid. But you love to do it. And there's nothing more rewarding than being a dad. Nothing more rewarding. So
That's awesome. I love that. And I know that you having two boys, and I've known, your sons, we've known each other our entire lives, grown up knowing each other. I remember going to Nico's, what was that, like his 4th or 5th birthday party. That's how far back we go. Wow. Over at Thunderland.
Wow. Right? Thunderland. Okay.
Yeah, so we're going way back. And you kind of touched on this. And the first question that I've got for you, and you started to allude to it right then when you were introducing yourself, but we've been asking the fathers that we've had on this podcast series, how does work influence the approach that you take as a father and that you've taken as a father? And I know that you kind of you started to touch on that, and I just am curious to know more, specifically with being in education. Have there been things that you've taken directly from work and applied it to raising your kids, and vice versa? Have there been things that you've taken from raising your kids that you've directly applied to your role as a principal, as an educator?
Yes. As you were asking that, I was thinking there's a broad picture to it of, as an educator, you see so many facets of life, and you see things where young people are performing at a very high level, and you go home and you say, son, I need you to think about this, right? You also see young people performing at a much lower level, and you say, son, you better not, right? So you have that broad picture of it. A more specific picture is when you're in education, you're teaching lessons all day, and it's not just math and English. You're teaching lessons all day. And how do you do that? And there's so many creative tools in being able to do that. And it's not me knowing everything. It's really observing other educators and what kind of success that they've had. When you're teaching, you have to teach young people to where they can receive it. So there's more than one way of receiving something. So I have to say, young man, don't do this. Well, he might not respond to that. You might need to quiz him. Young man, why would you do this? Maybe it helps him learn it. Maybe you need to put his or her hands on it to let him or her practice what worked and what didn't work. They learn their lesson through that. Some people visually need to see it. Some people I need to partner peers together and let them talk to their other peers. Lord knows that I've had Nico and Solomon call Avery, right? And he'll tell you, because I know what you're going to tell them. There's so many different ways that young people receive that kind of information. So you practice that a little bit. And I think, you mentioned the other side of it was not only what you give to your kids, but what these kids give you. So I'm thinking about, I've learned so much just by observing how young people operate. I've learned so much about watching my kids operate. And one of the key pieces, taking school and putting it back into your family, but taking your family and putting it into school.
There you go.
Yep. Like I've sat with so many, I don't want to give these young people anything that I wouldn't give my children. Right? That's the love that you have for all students. I wouldn't give them anything that I wouldn't give my kids. Yeah. When I sit down with a family, I can say I'm a dad. So I can talk to you about math and English like a principal, but I can just talk to you like I'm a dad.
Yeah.
And that gives you, that's a big majority. That's a big portion of it.
Yeah.
There's always curriculum and policy. There's always that stuff that you can put together. But when you could speak to somebody, whether it's a parent or a child or a guardian or what have you, as a parent, there's a certain language, Brian, there's a certain language that parents understand with each other. And when we talk to each other like parents, it's much different than the principal calling home. Absolutely. Or calling home. It's just another dad saying, look, I care about your kid. Here's what I see happening, blah, 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 blah. That's been a huge piece around connecting the two.
Man, I respect on that, man, because my father was a principal. He was an educator, but for a time he was a principal and a teacher who was in educational research for 40 years. And so when I'm listening to you talk, it kind of reminds me a little bit about my dad, right? Because that's kind of, he carried that mantra throughout his life, and just dealing with people, right? Taking his experiences in the classroom, certainly using them for me and my brother, but then to kind of watch him, maneuver through life a little bit. I'm kind of like, man, his experiences in education are the things that are allowing him to matriculate like this thing called life. And so one of the things, Chris, that Avery and I often do when we do our keynotes and our online presentations and training workshops is we ask people the question, who are you? Because we're always trying to work on self-awareness and self-exploration. And we have so much fun with it because you can see people's minds churning a little bit when we ask them that question, who are you? And so that's what I want to ask you today. I want to ask you the question, who are you? But in the context of a father, right? If you could just give that some thought for a moment and just like, how would you describe yourself as a dad? I know it's one of those questions that makes you think a little bit, man, but we're just really, really curious to dive into the thought of a father.
Describe myself as a father. I'm thinking of some of the first things that come to mind are some of the soft concepts of a role model. Okay. I want to display the actions that I want my sons to do. You don't always want to be a teller, you want to be a modeler. And so, what does that mean? That means I want to model how to treat others. Want to model how to treat their mother. I want to model how to treat their grandparents. I want to model how to be aware of your surroundings. I want to model a level of strength and dignity and righteousness. And I want to be able to model that in a positive way. All of us have our moments, and I don't want those moments to be in front of my children. I want to model in a good way for them. So when you first said that, that's what first came to mind. Now I remember some of the, I guess more old school operational pieces of a father needs to be a provider for your family, right? Make sure they have what they need to have. Be that one to where, sometimes you need to say the things that others don't want to say, right? That's the dad's role. I need to be able to say that. I need to be able to create, I remember as a kid, there was a level of respect and there was a level of fear, right? That level of respect allowed us to never have to deal with that fear. But as a dad, I know my dad was with me, and I think that I was this way with my sons, is out of when they were younger, right? I'm gonna ask you to do certain things, and you're gonna do them out of respect, and just that's the way we operated. And if it ever got to that point to where you just didn't want to do it, you're gonna do it because I told you to do it. That's the dad piece of it. And those moments may be, spaced far apart. But that's that dad piece of it. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I think, there's a lot of those other, again, provider, et cetera, and being the hard guy sometimes. But I think really the biggest piece of it was being a role model. I think that extends beyond when they're young, when they're small and they look up to you. But even if they get older, they start thinking about what dad did 10 years ago. Yeah. What dad did 20 years ago. When they start realizing what life looks like, and they go, man, I remember my dad when I was 5, that's why he did that. Yep. Right. Or that's why when they start doing that, you are now a role model. I want them to be able to mimic the good things that I've done, and I want them to exceed. Right? I want them to be better than I was, and I want their kids to be better than them. I think that's just how we progress through generations.
Yeah. I like that, Abe. Before I throw this over to you, the reason I really love your answer is because one of the things that Avery and I always talk about, whether it be in leadership within organizations, whether you just be a worker bee within an organization, or, a friend, family member, parent, whatever the case may be, the importance of modeling behavior. Yep. Right. Because that is the thing that we are tasked to do. None of us are perfect, right? None of us have, the playbook for perfection. But what we and we can't control everything, but we can control the behavior that we model. Right. And so, I like that. Okay, cool. I appreciate that, man, because I know that's a question that people really don't think about often, and you get it tossed to you, and you're kind of like, damn, who am I as a dad? So,
you don't think about it. It's not scripted. It's just kind of like, what do you think? Yeah. And it really tests you to go, what do you really think? That's a great question.
Yeah. And I think, to piggyback on your answer, I think one of the things that I've been learning through this podcast series, and then through watching my dad and him being the father that he was, being a good dad is about being a leader and not necessarily just being a boss. And I learned about that a few years back, just the difference. I heard somebody elaborate on what's the difference between being a boss and a leader. and the fact that a boss is somebody that can dictate and tell you what to do. And dads play that role. My dad played that role. You sound like you play that role, but a leader is somebody that will galvanize people to allow them to understand why we're doing something, like why you're doing the thing that you're doing. And as a good father, if you're allowing or you're explaining, you know, why you're having your kids do the things that you're doing, if you're modeling what you want them to do by your own actions, like that is the difference between just being a father and being a really good father or being a great father, is passing down, you know, and like you said, modeling that behavior. The other thing that I thought was really interesting is hearing you talk about the respect and the fear thing, because that's come up now a couple of times in these conversations, because that's really big for us as men, and I've learned as fathers, those two things, primarily with the respect thing. But I wanted to touch on the fear aspect of it, because I had a conversation with a friend of mine who, she's a social worker, and we were discussing the role that fear plays in a person's upbringing, and her entire kind of like thought process around it was geared negatively. And it was just like, fear being, you know, having a fear-based household is not very healthy. And I just had to point out to her that there is a small element of fear that can be positive, from the standpoint of, I feared getting in trouble because of my parents and because of the repercussions that I knew I would get from my parents, like getting in trouble in school, getting in trouble outside of the household. I feared how that would make my parents feel, and then the punishment that I would get from my parents, thus leading me to act right. Like that was my biggest motivation for it. Wasn't anything else besides just knowing that my parents would be incredibly disappointed in me, the fear of disappointing my parents.
Right.
So I think that it's really interesting to hear you talk about that and use respect and fear kind of simultaneously hand in hand, because I felt that. I feel that is an important piece of raising kids and an important piece of being a father.
Right. And that's the feeling that, you know, you want your children to have, because it wasn't a fear out of abuse. It wasn't that kind of fear.
Right.
It was the fear of, if I looked at them and went, "You did what?" Like, that's it. Like, that's it.
Yep.
Like, just that disappointment, and, you know, you might need to raise your voice, but just that is enough.
Yeah.
And when that's enough, that's where you want to be. You never have to go beyond that, because your kids feel it.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Your kids feel that. And I remember an educator actually talked about this before, because there's always this piece around education around discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's always this piece around discipline. And what do you do? And you can have different conversations, and you can have restorative justice conversations, and, you know, eliminate suspensions with kids going from school. I mean, I support all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Still, the idea is one of the greatest forms of love is discipline.
Mm-hmm.
So when I talk to kids, that, you know, are mad that they're in trouble or whatever, and I go, if you did something at home, or you did not clean up your room, right? Would your mom jump on you? And they go, "Oh yeah, Mr. Orr, they absolutely would." Okay. And if you brought home a bad grade, would your dad? "Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Orr." Okay. Who loves you more than anybody in this world? My parents. Okay. Because when people are on you about things, that means they care about you. When you start ignoring you, that's when you need to worry. Don't worry about the people that are on you. Worry about the people that ignore you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the philosophy between, you know, that part of it. And I think that's an important piece. Yep. And going back to your piece, Avery, about modeling, I always tried to make an effort with my sons of talking about the why.
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking you to do something. Here's why.
Mm-hmm.
They were young, right? And sometimes they probably roll their eyes because they're sitting in the car, and I'm just going on and on, right? I'm going on and on, because I need them to understand the why. I've already told you what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Here's why. Because at some point, you're going to be in a place to have to make your own decision. I'm not going to be there, but maybe I might be on your shoulder.
Yep.
Right? Maybe they might hear that and go, "Oh yeah." Like, I need them to understand why. I was never just tell them what to do and that's the end of it. There's always a why. And as a parent, I think that's important to do. And that connects to education. Even when I tell kids to do that on the back end, here's why.
Yeah.
Right. Here's why you need to do your homework. Here's why you need to take these assessments. Here's why you need to shake hands the right way. Here's why you need to stand up straight. Like there's always a why. And it's important to be able to teach that.
Yeah, I think that just to piggyback on what you just said, the importance of the why, it also goes into how you build trust, right? Giving people the why behind your reasoning or what it is you're asking them to do is a trust builder, right? You know, Avery and I call them trust makers. And that is one of the trust makers, is giving people the why behind what it is you do. So no, this is good, man. This is good. Hey, Abe, I had a question, but if do you have one that you wanna jump in on first?
You can go ahead and ask yours, and we can just keep going from there.
All right, really, really cool. Okay, so Chris, I wanted to ask you. I'm asking this of every father that we're speaking with, and I think it's such an important question. Can you name a particular moment in time, or an event, or a circumstance that contributed into the father that you became, or the father that you are? Was there a moment that mattered, that influenced that, or took you in a particular direction? Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's a lot of moments. What I've always known as a father and as a leader, and I think Brian, you brought this up, is that a leader is about always learning. That's my opinion. A leader is about being a lead learner. So even as a principal, when I'm on campus, I'm not there to tell everybody what to do. Mm-hmm. I'm able to put minds together, right? And let's grow from each other. That's the idea of it, of being a lead learner, is what they would call it. So I've always looked to that, and I've always admired. I admire you, Brian, and I've admired your children. I've admired your wife. But there are other fathers that I've seen over the years that I've admired the relationships that they have with the children. And I've admired the success that they've had doing it. So I've watched some of those things. And just like anything else, man, if you see somebody doing something good, you steal it, put it in your pocket and say, okay, I'm gonna do the same thing. Or I'm gonna do something like it. As long as you feel it, but you steal those practices.
Right.
I can remember one thing that settled with me, and it's hard to do, but it is something that settles with me a little bit. I knew a dad that was a parent of a student that I worked with when I was at Sacramento High School. Okay. And kid was a phenomenal kid, nicest kid, very respectful, just a great kid all the way around. He was the kind of kid, when somebody visited your school, you were like, hey, let me introduce you to this kid.
Oh,
like, he was the kid that represented everything that you wanted. And he did it naturally and sincerely. That's just who he was. It was Darius Graham, by the way. And he, the UC Davis student, point guard, the whole nine. But him and his father, his dad, Sebastian, is a guy that I admire a lot. And I remember seeing him at a track meet. And this is after Darius was already at UC Davis. Mm-hmm. And I saw him, and him and I talked. And I go, hey, how's it going? Because my kids are still in high school. Hey, how's it going? Your kids away at school, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, man, I talk to that dude every day. Mm. He FaceTimes me on campus. And then I, going back to our previous conversation, started remembering that even while he was in high school, I would see him and his dad just hanging out. Mm-hmm. I would see him and his dad at a game. I would see him and his dad at a sandwich spot. I would see him and his dad driving through the neighborhood. Like they were all, so they and he explained this to me as he goes, I'm almost transitioning into a friendship, son. And that's transitioning for me. And I didn't strategically do it, but going back to what we said before, letting your kids understand the why, right, puts them in a place of, I'm not just going to tell you what to do because you're my son and you're younger and just do what dad says, but I'm going to talk to you about why. That means I'm talking to you. When I talk to you about why, I don't just talk at you. I go, what do you think? Make them talk back to me. So now we're having a conversation. As they get older, those conversations become more broad. Yeah. Right? Now you know that you have a resource in me to come talk to dad. Friend, hey man, I'm having problems with my girlfriend. Like, I mean, just I want my sons to be able to do that. And that's a transitional relationship. So you talk about a moment when I talked to Mr. Graham about that and seeing how his eyes lit up. I talk to my son every day, and it's developing, it's turning into that friendship piece of it. I'm thinking about my dad. As I became older, now me and my dad are more friends, right? He's always going to be dad, but I can talk to him about life experiences in a really different way. He's my role model. He's the one that I would go to with, I'm having a problem. If there's anybody I would go to him. I want that relationship with my sons.
Love that.
So that was an experience that always sits with me.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. So the fellas are now a freshman in college and a senior in college. Are you almost at that point? Where are you in your definition of friendship with your sons right now, right? Because Avery and Justin are older than Solomon and Nico, right? So Avery's obviously been out of college for a couple of years. Justin's been out of college Justin's been going on 2 years now, Avery 3. So, 25 years old and 23 years old now. Yours are a little younger. Are you close to that? Are you close to allowing them to be? Yeah, I could. Where are we on that track, man?
Man. So it is okay, so how do I answer? So yes, those conversations are becoming more broad.
Okay.
Yes, but it's not something I can pinpoint an age or a year. I think their own individual personalities identify a part of that. The comfort of a dad of knowing that they do have different personalities, and I need to be able to allow them to have different personalities. And one of them is going to come to me about everything, and the other one's going to come to me about not everything. I'm gonna have to pull out of them a little bit. And I think they both have the comfort of coming to dad, but again, each of them have their own personalities and their own individualism and how they're going to handle things.
Right.
My oldest went away to Arizona State for a couple years, so he learned how to live. He learned how to go through some things, and that's a scary thing. Now, I can tell you this as a dad, that's some scary things. You teach them everything that they need to know.
Yeah. You
give them all the principles that they need to have. And then you have a lifeline to them. Like, you can call me 24/7, whatever you need.
Yep.
And you go through all of this practice for 18 years. And then for some reason, we're dumb enough just to drop them off somewhere and drive home. The world made me think that was okay, man. That was the hardest thing I ever had to do in my life, man. Dropping that dude off at school was like, not that I was worried about him, because I've taught him everything, and I have to know that they're going to go through experiences just like I did. Just have to have a safety net, right? To catch them if they fall, but just let him experience what he needs to experience. So it absolutely felt like it was the right thing, but man, it was hard.
Yeah.
You raise kids for 18 years and then you drop them off somewhere? Are you crazy?
Yeah.
But that's what I was driving home thinking, going, what's wrong? I thought something was wrong with me. So yes, I think we're there, but again, they each have different personalities, and there's different experiences where they may be more apt to share this and then not so much that.
Got it.
But the crazy thing is I know you see this as a dad, is for the most part, we've experienced a lot. So everything that they're experiencing, I've kind of already experienced. When they don't want to tell me, I kind of already know. Right? I'm just letting you flounder into what you think I don't know, but I kind of already know.
Right.
Watching it. And when those moments come and it clicks and they come back and they say, Dad, I got it. That feels good. Like, okay, A, you got it, and B, you're comfortable to tell me you got it. Right? Versus just letting them go, and it's not something I can put my thumb on. because every circumstance is different. Every situation is different. You know, we could be locked in on Wednesday and be completely off on Thursday. That part doesn't change.
Yeah.
That's a challenge.
Yeah. Well, I'll add this since my boys are older than your boys are. It's still a challenge for me too, right? Part of my journey in 2021 is working on that, right? Because they're grown men now. Yeah. Neither one of them live at the house, right? I ain't paying nobody's rent, right? I ain't paying nobody's car payment. So, but you're still dad, right? And so you still have these inklings when you see certain things popping off or happening where you want to just jump in and say something or help them resolve something. That's kind of a work in progress for me. I got better at it when they were away at college, because I kind of changed the way in which I would approach them to say things like, are you open for some feedback, as opposed to just, popping in and just saying, do this, do that, do this, do that. So it's still a journey, man. It's just kind of the dad in you. I only have one more question for you, but Abe, I'll turn it over to you for a thought that you have, and then there's really a question that I really want to that's relevant for the times that I want to ask Chris. But go ahead, Abe. I'll shoot it over to you.
Well, the thing that I listened to and I resonated a lot with was you talked about how you recognize your sons have different personalities. They respond differently to things. Their level of individualism might be different. And so I think that's the awareness that I've been receiving a lot from different fathers, is understanding just how you approach your kids, how you converse with your kids, understanding what their triggers may be that then lead the conversation down a rabbit hole that you just didn't want it to get to, and now you're here and you're just figuring, now you're climbing back out this rabbit hole like, wait, we were supposed to just be talking about X, Y, Z, and now we're talking about A, B, and C.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really interesting, and I remember during college and since college getting to this point where I was having different conversations with my dad based on where I was in my life, and realizing like these are conversations that, to your point, like they're getting broader in the just the scope and the breadth of conversations that we're having. We're having conversations about different topics now. Just last week, a few days before Christmas, I'm having a conversation with my dad about stocks. And, for this is a brand new conversation for me. I've never had this dilemma of, should I keep my money in this stock right now? Or, what, I'm kind of feeling like it might be time. I kind of need some funds immediately. So like those type of conversations that they're brand new for me, but I know that he's been through it before. We've, kind of touched on it in the past. And so having him as a resource it's incredible. I irreplaceable, I would say, just because, you've got somebody, like you said, to your point, and I feel it with my dad, but 24/7, somebody on that other end that I can bounce ideas off of. That in itself is, like I said, it's irreplaceable. You can't top that.
Yeah, that's a good feeling, man. I'll tell you, one of the hardest things to do, and going back to your dad's point, is when we see, right, you going down this path, it very much want to say, stop. I see what you're doing, do this, right? Because you see it coming.
Yeah.
The hardest thing to do is just go, okay. And just let them be. It's hard to do because you are like, boy, I see, and it ends up falling apart just like you thought it was.
Yep.
But you're just when your son comes and says, hey, I need some help, then you're like, thank you. I've seen that. I thank you for asking, because I can help you. I know how to fix this.
Yeah.
But when they don't, and you hint like, hey, I want to talk to you, and Dad, I got it, or whatever, you kind of just go, okay. Oh man, that's hard to do because you see it coming.
Yeah.
And mom sees it coming too. So when mom gets involved and starts going, hey, Chris, I see this, blah, 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 blah. You're like, honey, he's not 12.
Yeah.
He's not 12. And if you jump too fast, then you create a whole different problem.
Yeah.
Right. You create a whole different problem. So you kind of just have to let it go and just try to be that safety net.
Yeah.
I think as a dad, I want them to remember the lessons that I taught.
Sure.
So they don't have to go through it. Like I'm already I'm hoping that my failures or whatever I did, I hope that those are lessons so you don't have to go through it.
Yeah.
Sometimes they insist on going through it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we were probably the same way.
Yeah.
We were probably the same way at 19, 20 years old. We were probably the same way.
Yeah.
But I try to limit those as much as possible. That's hard.
It's very, very hard, and I'm cracking up because you are the third father on this podcast series that has said the exact same thing, and so it's just a running theme with fathers and with dads and parents. But you just hope that you prepared them. Like when you dropped Nico off at Arizona State and you came back, you're like, did I tell him this? Did I tell him that? It's like, it's like, yeah, I did. You laid the foundation. Now it's up to them to go ahead and do it, man. And so now, how old were you when Nico was born?
I was 29.
Okay, 29. Okay, and so when Avery was born, I was 31. Okay. When Avery was born.
Yeah.
Avery, that's a good question for cats your age or around you. Well, I'll turn that over to you, Avery, because you might have a question regarding that a little bit.
Well, yeah, I think and this will be the last question that I have. If there was one piece of advice that you could give to young fathers, whether it's something that you learned or something that you've learned along the way, whether it's something that was taught to you or something that you learned along the way, if there was one piece of advice that you would deem, just if you needed to know one thing about being a father, I'm curious to know what that thing would be, from you.
Wow, there's so many, but I think probably that core piece around being a father, as your dad mentioned, and you talked about the age thing, prepared. What we are doing is you are bringing life into this world, right? So it's always, whenever somebody's having a baby, it's always a blessing. And people always say, oh my God, it's a blessing that God has given us a child. Like, yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. It is a blessing that is a miracle that we cherish and consider, we celebrate no matter what. But again, this is about being that man piece. Mm-hmm. If you are a father, that means you are a provider. You have decided to bring a life into this world. And this world is not always friendly. Mm-hmm. It's not always fun. But when I decided to have a child, yes, me and my wife with love and the celebrations and the birthday, like all that stuff is fun. But at the end of the day, I'm bringing a life into this world. So you look at the level of poverty and homelessness and the struggles that folks are going through. Do I want to bring a life into a world to experience that? So I would always give advice to young people that if you are thinking about starting a family, right, make sure you can provide. Make sure you are bringing them into a world that you can support. Now, when I say provide, I don't mean you got to be this.
Right.
Because there's always I'm working and I'm saying, okay, I want to get to this position before I have it. And I want to get to, there's always going to be something that you want to do.
Sure.
So it's a fine line. It's not, I have to be a millionaire in order to have a kid. That's not what I'm getting at. But to have a level of stability, know that I can take care of a child. I know that I can provide this child with the necessities. And the necessities don't mean extravagance. The necessities mean I can provide them with food and shelter and love and guidance, right? I am mature enough to be able to do that. Yeah. At 19, I wasn't mature enough to do that. At 23, I wasn't mature enough. Right. So you have to be in a place. And I think, your dad mentioned it, that, we can't control circumstances, but we can always control how we respond to them. I'm responsible for that.
Yep.
If I have a child, I did that. I'm responsible for that. Right. I'm responsible for that. So I need to know ahead of time what I'm providing for this life.
Yeah.
So if I was talking to somebody about what you need to have that. That's the core piece of it.
Yeah.
The rest of it goes from there.
Love that. Okay, so as we wrap up our time with you today, and we're wrapping up the year 2020 right now, which has been like a year like no other for any of us, living today in the midst of this pandemic. My question to you is, even though the boys are older now, again in college, one about to graduate from college, has COVID-19, has this whole experience this year impacted you or influenced you in the way in which you see your role as a father? Even though the boys are older, has this pandemic in any way, shape, or form it changed you? Not necessarily changed you, but how's it influenced your role? In terms of how you see yourself as a dad? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So a couple things. So how it has, I guess, validated some things and impacted some things moving forward. So I'll give you an example of my youngest one, Solomon. So COVID hit during his senior year of high school. Okay. So COVID hit where this young man in his senior year of high school missed out on track season, missed out on that he was looking forward to, missed out on prom that he was looking forward to, missed out on a graduation ceremony that he was looking forward to. Then he got accepted into these colleges, right? He can't move into a dorm, right? I mean, he missed that whole experience. So if there's any reason for a kid to just go into the dumps because he or she missed all those things, he had every reason. Yeah. Because nothing really went well. His whole senior year and the beginning of college, those are two very exciting times in his life. And that's been altered because of COVID. But, God works in mysterious ways. And this young man has always had an old spirit. He's always had an old, wise spirit, right? Solomon, right? Of course, that name, but an old, wise spirit to where when these things happen, he'd go, oh man. And then we would just sit and talk very calmly and logically and go back to those, look, we can't control circumstances, but we can control how we respond to them, right? Tomorrow's going to happen whether we like it or not. So we can be mad today, but if you don't do anything, tomorrow's just going to be the same day. You have to think of progress somewhere. You have to, and you manage that. You control that.
Right.
And the level of maturity that he's had through this, right? Where, okay, it's okay. All right. And, he might be like, yeah, I'm in the first year of college, but I'm in the room right next to you, but he had a great semester. His grades were good. So take it for what it is. But he handled everything with such a mature spirit, and he didn't dwell on it. He didn't dwell on things that he couldn't control. He just adapted, like, okay. And then he moved on. Yeah. And then he moved on, and he did it in such an amazing way. And me and his mom were so proud of the way that he handled all of this stuff. And I have to say the validation part could be for me and his mom over the years, always talking and explaining and modeling and putting good people like you guys and his aunties and uncles and grandparents and putting those people in front of him to where he always had role models of this is how you handle things. Happened to him, he knew how to handle it. So that's a validation of a piece around the COVID thing.
Love it.
The other side of it, talking about adjustments, yeah, man, I had, and I tell my teachers this, is relationships are very normal in any kind of leadership position, just like they are with your kids, right? You have relationships with them. So I have 2 sons. So how easy is it for us to go to a Kings game, right? Or go play catch, or go shoot around, or go grab some food, or go to the movies, or just like, it's just easy for us to operate. That's that relational piece that we've always had. Well, COVID put a wrinkle in that.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's not as convenient for us just to hop in a car and go somewhere. We can't. Right. We're stuck. So there was a time with COVID where a day gets on top of a day that gets on top of a day. They got their thing. I got my thing. Tasha has her thing. And we find ourselves like almost separated.
Yeah.
And I pause for a minute and I go, man, I ain't hung out with my sons. And we haven't hung out. Yeah. We're in the house together, but it's not the same. Yeah. So I literally strategically got both of them and said, we're going to have, I set up dates with them. Set up dates. How crazy is that? And again, our teachers, the same things. Like we have to schedule a time to hang out. I have to do this with teachers. I have to schedule a time just to talk.
Yeah.
Not about evaluate, I have to schedule versus being able to walk across the hall and see a teacher in their classroom.
Yeah.
See them in the hallways or to see them. We're not able to do all that. So you have to strategically schedule times to just connect.
Yeah.
And I did that with my sons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where, and it's a little tougher now, but when, outdoor dining was available, it would just be like me and Nico would go have lunch together, just him and I, right? And me and Solomon would go, work out together, but just him and I.
Yeah.
I would have to schedule stuff that just was naturally, and that's awkward.
Yeah.
Awkward.
That's awkward. It's never been like that, but that's how COVID has impacted everything. Everything is on a schedule right now, and everybody's life is altered, and we can't forget about the easy communication, relational stuff that just happened naturally.
Yeah.
We're having to plan that, but if we don't plan it, we lose it.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm mindful of.
Wow. You're modeling adaptability.
There you go. There you go.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Well, brother, thank you so very, very much, man. This was awesome. I love just hearing the stories and the perspective and the reminders. This is going to be great for, hasn't just been great for us, but going to be great for the audience that comes across this particular session of this fatherhood series and the podcast, man. This is deep, man. I encourage you to listen to all the sessions when we post them, because you can hear the different perspectives of different dads, and we're going to be talking to some folks that have just girls coming up soon. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you and I, we have boys, but it's just going to be interesting to talk to a dad with a girl, because the perspectives are different on that sort of thing, man. Sure. But this was awesome, man. We greatly appreciate you taking the time, man, to just kind of just share with us what you have today. And with that being said, Abe, I'll just let you kind of take us out on this. And Chris, again, man, much love to you for sharing the time with us.
I appreciate you. Thank you for having me. Always have admired your family, and brother, we can talk for hours about this kind of stuff as we have in the past, and we will do so, man. So I appreciate you guys, and I love the conversation and the work that you're doing for the community. So thank both.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for checking out another episode of the Old Eyes, New Glasses Fatherhood series. Be sure to hit that subscribe button below to see all of our latest videos, or check out some of our best clips.